The Missing Letter, written by Katherine Fletcher. This audiobook uses AI-generated narration. Chapter 1. Something's Off. Dorothy, or Dot Halstead, noticed things. It was not a skill she had cultivated, nor a talent anyone had praised. She simply paid attention, which in her experience put her ahead of roughly 90% of the human race. On this Monday morning in mid-October, what she noticed was a scratch on the lock of the back door of the Kettle Creek Historical Society. She had arrived at 8:15 for her volunteer shift, the same as every Monday for the past 11 years. The Historical Society occupied a converted Victorian house on Main Street, wedged between Bender's Hardware and a real estate office that changed names every 18 months. She unlocked the front door, hung her jacket on the hook Tom installed when the building still had carpet, and caught her reflection in the glass of the nearest display case. The woman looking back at her was on the wrong end of 60, shorter than she used to be by at least an inch, and built like her mother, solid through the middle, soft in the arms. Her hair was white and cut short, practical. She smoothed a piece that had gone rogue in the October wind, adjusted the collar of her blouse, and moved on. She walked the ground floor as she always did. Front room, reading nook, hallway, back office, back door. The scratch on the lock was fresh, a thin silver line against the brass curved just below the keyhole. Not a key scrape, too deliberate. Someone had worked at this lock with a tool. She checked the deadbolt, intact but stiff. It was turned by someone unfamiliar with its temperament. Dot knew this lock. You had to lift the handle slightly and push left before the bolt slid home. Whoever opened this door figured that out, meaning they were patient. In the back hallway, a wooden chair had been shifted 2 feet toward the basement stairs. Subtle. She went downstairs. The basement air was cool and still, with the faint smell of old paper and dust. The time capsule sat on a padded table in the center of the room. The steel cylinder was sealed in 1976 during Kettle Creek's founding celebration. It was dug up 2 weeks ago for Saturday's 50th anniversary celebration, and the whole town was buzzing about it. Dot examined the seal. The original weld was smooth, careful work, but near the left hinge, the metal showed fresh tool marks, tiny, precise scratches. The seal had been pried open and pressed back into place by someone who did not want this noticed. Almost succeeded too. She went back upstairs and called the police. Officer Brandt arrived 20 minutes later. He was young, polite, and clearly thinking about something else. He followed Dot through the building while she showed him the evidence. Here, Dot pointed at the back door. The scratch on the lock plate, fresh, and the deadbolt was stiff when I tested it this morning. Someone unfamiliar with the mechanism worked it open. Brandt leaned in, then straightened. Could be a key scrape. We get those sometimes when people miss the slot. The scrape is below the keyhole, not beside it. Below. That's a pick, not a missed key. He wrote something in his notepad. Anything else? The chair in the hallway was moved, and downstairs the time capsule's seal has fresh tool marks. Someone pried it open and resealed it. Brandt followed her to the basement. He photographed the capsule, tilted his head at the seal, and wrote another line in his notepad. Probably kids. She tisk-tisked. Kids with lock-picking tools and the patience to reseal a 50-year-old weld? Mrs. Halstead, we get a lot of curiosity break-ins around events like this. The anniversary's been in the paper all month. Somebody wanted a peek. A peek at what? Nobody knows what's in the capsule. That's the whole point of opening it Saturday. Brandt tucked his pen away. No visible damage, no obvious theft. The capsule's still sealed, as far as we can tell. It's resealed. There's a difference. We'll keep the report on file. If you notice anything else, give us a call. After the front door closed behind him, Dot stood alone in the basement and looked at the capsule. The precision of the work, the care taken to leave no obvious trace. This was not vandalism. This was not curiosity. This was not kids. She pulled out her phone and took her own photographs. Close-ups of the tool marks, the lock scratch, the shifted chair. Then she sat in the front room, made herself a cup of tea, and called her friend, Beverly, the best baker in town. Beverly Chase picked up on the second ring. "Good morning." "Something happened at the Historical Society," Dot said. "Someone broke in over the weekend, picked the back lock, and opened the time capsule." A pause. "Opened it? Why?" "That's what I'd like to know." "The police filed it as minor vandalism. The officer who came out was very nice, but very uninterested." "Dot Halstead, I can hear you sharpening your pencil from here." "I'm not sharpening anything. I'm observing." "You're observing the way a cat observes a mouse hole." "Are you bringing this to Thursday?" "I'm bringing it to Thursday." "Good. I'll make lemon squares." The tea kettle whistled. Dot turned off the burner, filled the pot, and carried it to the sunroom. Tom's favorite room. He'd been gone 5 years and she still thought of it that way. 3 walls of windows overlooking the backyard, and its oak tree, with a sliver of Kettle Lake visible through the branches. Wicker furniture, floral cushions, and a bookshelf stuffed with mysteries, alphabetized by author. This was the Thursday Book Club. 12 years of mystery novels debated in this room every week. Tonight, however, they were not discussing a book. The doorbell rang. October wind pushed through the front door when she opened it, carrying the smell of dead leaves and somebody's fireplace. Beverly stood on the porch with a covered dish. She had to duck slightly entering the sunroom doorway, the way she always did. She was tall and lean. Her blonde hair was going gray in streaks she made no effort to hide, tucked behind her ears. She set the dish on the side table beside the teapot, bowed her head for a quick, quiet prayer over the food, and settled into the wicker chair nearest the bookshelf. June let herself in, without knocking. "I brought nothing, and I'm not sorry about it. Is that lemon squares?" "Yes, indeed," Beverly confirmed. "Beverly, you're the only reason I come to these meetings. You come because you like arguing about books." "That too." June dropped her bag on the floor, kicked off her shoes, and took her usual seat. She was the youngest of the 4, at 62. Her auburn hair was cropped close in a pixie cut she'd been wearing since her 30s, compact and fit. "I passed Craig Marsh, you know, the councilman running the anniversary, on Main Street today. He looked like a man who hasn't slept in a week. Just thought I'd mention that. Craig Marsh always looks like that before an election." This was different. This was a man with something on his mind besides yard signs. Margaret arrived last, precisely on time, with a leather notebook and 2 sharpened pencils. She was the smallest of the 4, barely 5'3", with dark hair she kept colored. Asian genes had her passing for 50, and she knew it. Everything about her was neat. Her clothes, her posture, her handwriting. She took her seat, crossed her ankles, opened the notebook to a fresh page, and waited. "No small talk tonight, Margaret?" June munched on a lemon square. "I'll make small talk when there's small news. Dot called an off-schedule meeting. That's not small." Something happened at the Historical Society on Monday. Dot laid her phone on the coffee table, photographs pulled up. Someone broke in through the back door, kicked the lock, went to the basement, opened the time capsule, and resealed it. She showed them the photographs, the scratch, the chair, the tool marks. Beverly leaned forward and studied the images through her reading glasses. "Should we be worried? About Saturday, I mean?" Dot picked up her tea. "Depends on what they were after." "What did the police say?" Margaret asked. "Officer Brandt said, and I quote, 'probably kids.'" June snorted. "Of course he did." "I showed him the tool marks on the seal. I showed him the pick marks on the lock. He took photographs, filed a report, and told me to call if I noticed anything else." "Which means the report is in a filing cabinet and nobody's looking at it." June waved a hand. "I agree. That's why we're here." "So someone broke into the Historical Society to get into a 50-year-old time capsule," June said, "in a town where the biggest crime last year was somebody stealing a kayak from the marina. What's in there that's worth the trouble?" "The original manifest from 1976 is on file. a typed witness list of every item placed in the capsule. If something were taken out or put in, the manifest would show it. And if whatever was touched comes out at Saturday's public ceremony, someone could be blindsided. Margaret uncapped her pencil. Who witnessed the manifest? Mayor Finch, Ruth Adler, and Edwin Marsh. June set down her second lemon square. Edwin Marsh, as in Craig Marsh's grandfather. The same. June stopped chewing. Margaret's pencil hovered over the notebook. Beverly took off her reading glasses and looked at Dot. All right. June waved her square. What are we doing about it? Margaret, I need you at the society. Pull the 1976 manifest and anything in the financial archives from that year. Donations, ledgers, receipts. You'll know what matters when you see it. Margaret wrote it down without comment. 34 years in banking had given her an eye for numbers, the way June's 30 years of teaching had given her an eye for people. June, building access. Who has keys? Who's requested them recently? Who's been in and out in the past month? I know a woman on the board. She owes me a favor from the school fundraiser. I'll call her tonight. Beverly, the old-timers, anyone who remembers the founding year. What went into that capsule and why? Especially anything people talked about at the time that didn't make it into the official record. Len Driscoll was a deacon at Kettle Creek Community Church in '76. He's got a memory like a steel trap, and he's been looking for someone to talk to since his wife passed. I'll visit him tomorrow morning. Good, I'll coordinate. We'll meet back here Friday evening. Bring everything you've got. June reached for another lemon square. You know, Dot, maybe we can write a mystery book this time. Chapter 2. The Sealed Letter. Rain hit the kitchen window at 6:45 on Friday morning. Dot barely noticed. The 1976 manifest lay open on the table beside her Earl Grey, 2 pages of single-space typewriter text on Historical Society letterhead. She had been reading it for 20 minutes, and she had read the last entry 3 times. Every item was listed, described, and witnessed by 3 signatures at the bottom: Mayor Harold Finch, Historical Society President Ruth Adler, and Edwin Marsh, one of the town's founding donors. Beverly arrived at 9, letting herself in through the side door, as always. She smelled of vanilla and cold October air. Hey, you're early. Dot set down her tea. I was up. Len Driscoll doesn't take visitors before 10, and I couldn't sit still. Beverly poured herself a cup of tea from the pot on the counter and settled into the kitchen chair across from Dot. What have you got? The manifest. Dot turned it so Beverly could see. Every item that went into the capsule in 1976. Photographs from the first council meeting, the Courier's inaugural edition, a founding donor's ledger, a hand-drawn map of the original village boundaries, a church hymnal from Kettle Creek Community Church, a bicentennial coin, and a small American flag from the 4th of July celebration. I remember that hymnal. The congregation voted on which one to include. There was a whole discussion about it. A Little League baseball, assorted personal mementos from 12 families. Dot paused. And this. She pointed to the bottom of the second page. Beverly leaned in. One sealed personal letter from Edwin Marsh to be opened at the 50th anniversary celebration. Beverly looked up. Really? I wonder what's in the letter. Hopefully nothing about his family and legacy. Can't really blame him when he owned most of the lakefront property, and his son expanded into commercial development. And now his grandson sits on the town council and is chairing the ceremony on Saturday. I suppose the current Marsh is running for re-election next month on a platform of civic pride and family legacy. Beverly sat back in her chair. A sealed personal letter, not a donation, not a civic document. A letter he wanted read in front of the whole town 50 years later. That's what I keep coming back to. Dot underlined the entry twice. Why seal it? Why 50 years? If it was a nice message for future generations, you don't seal it. You seal something you don't want read until you're gone. Her phone buzzed. June. Dot tapped to answer, and June's voice floated through the speaker. Craig Marsh requested a key to the Historical Society 2 weeks ago. filed the request through the board, and cited anniversary preparations. Perfectly legitimate. He signed the key out on October 2nd and hasn't returned it. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks to plan, scout, and execute. He knew the building. He knew the lock. He knew where the capsule was stored. This wasn't impulsive, Dot. No, it wasn't. She hung up and relayed June's findings to Beverly, then made a note in her composition book. Today's page had a new heading, Time Capsule. Beneath it was a growing list of facts. My turn, Beverly said. Len Driscoll. I'll go see him now and be back before lunch. She was back by 11:30. Len remembers everything. Beverly settled back into the kitchen chair. He was on the committee that organized the capsule ceremony. He remembers Edwin Marsh's letter specifically. What did he say about it? He said there was talk at the time, quiet talk among the older members of the congregation. Edwin was troubled about something. Wouldn't say what. Wouldn't talk to the pastor, wouldn't talk to his wife. But Len's father was close to Edwin, and he told Len years later that the letter was a confession of some kind. Something Edwin felt he needed to put right, but couldn't bring himself to do face to face. Dot looked at her. A confession. Len was very specific about the word. His father used it, and Len never forgot. Dot wrote in the notebook. Sealed letter. Edwin Marsh. Confession. Craig Marsh is chairing the anniversary celebration. Dot frowned. He's on the town council. He's running for re-election, and his grandfather buried a confession in a time capsule that's about to be opened in front of the entire town. We need Margaret's numbers. They didn't have to wait long. Dot's phone rang at 4:15. Dot. Margaret's voice was clipped. I'm at the Historical Society, the 1976 financial records. What did you find? Edwin Marsh made a substantial donation to the town's general fund in October of '76. The same week he placed his letter in the capsule. I've cross-referenced it against the county assessor's records for his known assets. The numbers don't add up. How so? There's money here that his property and his construction business couldn't have generated, not at the assessed values for that year. I need to walk everyone through the figures. Tonight. Sunroom, 7 o'clock, bring the notebook. I always bring the notebook. She hung up. Wind rattled the sunroom windows. The oak tree outside was a black shape against a purple sky, and the lake had disappeared into the dark. Inside, the lemon squares were gone, replaced by Beverly's oatmeal cookies. The tea was stronger. Dot stood. Ladies, let's see what we've got. June, you first. She sat down. Craig Marsh requested a key to the Historical Society on October 2nd. Filed through the board, citing anniversary preparations. Legitimate on paper. He hasn't returned it. June tapped her finger with each item. The building has no alarm system, no cameras. The board talked about installing them 2 years ago and tabled it for budget. Anyone with a key can walk in at any hour and nobody would know. So he had access. Margaret reached for a cookie. He had a front door key, handed to him on a silver platter. Beverly, go. Len Driscoll was on the 1976 committee. He remembers Edwin Marsh being troubled that year. There was quiet talk in the congregation, and Len's father, who was close to Edwin, told Len that the letter was a confession. He used that word specifically, a confession. A confession of what? June asked. Nobody alive does, as far as he's aware. That's where I come in. Margaret laid her notebook on the coffee table and turned it so the others could see the figures. Edwin Marsh made a substantial donation to the town's general fund in October 1976. The same week he placed his letter in the capsule. I pulled the county assessor's records and cross-referenced his known assets. His lakefront properties, the construction business, the farmland east of town. She tapped the circled number at the bottom of the page. The numbers don't add up. There's money in these figures that his holdings couldn't have generated, not at the assessed values for that year. How much are we talking about? June asked. Enough to notice, not enough to scream. The kind of amount a careful man buries in a legitimate donation, so it stops raising questions. If you weren't looking for it, you'd never see it. The sunroom went quiet. Dot spoke first. Here's what I believe happened. Edwin Marsh acquired money through means he wasn't proud of. Possibly connected to the lakefront property deals, possibly something else. She paused. He put a confession in the time capsule, sealed it, and buried it, knowing it wouldn't be opened for 50 years. Maybe he believed everyone involved would be gone by then. Maybe he just needed to confess and couldn't bring himself to do it to a living person. June wagged her finger. And now his grandson is about to watch that letter be opened in front of the entire town while he's chairing the ceremony, while he's running for re-election. So he took it? Does he even know about the sealed letter? Dot shrugged. We don't know, but he did request a key under legitimate pretenses. I bet he heard something from his folks or whispers around town. June finished her cookie. Margaret's gaze flickered from one woman to the other. So we're thinking Craig came in after hours, opened the capsule, removed the letter, resealed it. And on Saturday when the manifest is read, that letter simply won't be there. Dot nodded. Well, 50 years is a long time. Things get lost. Beverly chewed on her lips for a moment. What do we do with this? We could go to the police, June suggested. With what? Margaret said. A scratched lock and a theory? They're not reopening it because 4 women with a notebook think they've cracked it. Or we could confront Craig directly, Beverly asked, and he denies it. Dot shook her head. He has a legitimate key. He was in the building for anniversary preparations. He says he never touched the capsule, and we can't prove otherwise. Meanwhile, he knows we're watching, and that letter disappears permanently. Fireplace, shredder, the lake, gone. Beverly frowned, then shook her head. The confession is what we're assuming. What if it was something else? That letter may contain something that would hurt people who don't deserve to be hurt. Edwin's other descendants, families who bought property from the Marshes in good faith. We don't know what's in that letter. Do we have the right to force it into the open before we understand what we're dealing with? June sat back in her chair. Margaret's pen paused over her notebook. So we just let him get away with it? June asked. No, Dot was firm. We attend the ceremony tomorrow. We position ourselves at different points in the crowd, close enough to see the capsule and Craig's face. We watch him when the manifest is read and the letter isn't there. We observe. Dot looked at each of them. 12 years of reading mysteries in this room has taught me one thing. You watch first, then you act. And you never let the suspect know you're watching until you're ready to move. Margaret closed her notebook. June reached for another oatmeal cookie. Beverly bowed her head for just a moment, and when she looked up, her eyes were clear. Tomorrow. Chapter 3. A Better Mystery. Saturday dawned clear and cool, the kind of October morning that smelled of wood smoke and dying leaves, and made Kettle Creek look like a postcard someone had mailed to prove that small towns still existed. The 50th anniversary celebration filled the town commons with bunting in red, white, and blue, food vendors serving kettle corn and cider donuts, and families spreading blankets on the grass. The lake glinted behind the tree line, flat and bright. Children ran between booths. The high school band played something that was either a march or a show tune. The bass drum thumped through the ground. It could be felt through the crowd's shoes. The time capsule sat on a draped table near the gazebo, center stage. Craig Marsh stood beside it in a navy blazer with a small American flag pin on the lapel, shaking hands and smiling. Dot positioned herself near the front of the crowd beside Helen Waverly, the Historical Society's president. The October sun was warm on her face, but the wind off the lake had teeth. She pulled her jacket tighter and scanned the commons. Margaret to the left, angled for a clear sightline to Craig. June near the back with a cup of cider. Beverly beside the refreshment table. A woman next to Dot nudged her neighbor. My mother put a letter in that thing. Can you imagine? 50 years. I heard there's a signed baseball in there, the neighbor said, from the Little League team. Tommy Beach was on that team. He'll be thrilled. Helen Waverly stepped to the microphone. A retired schoolteacher, she gave a short speech about community and continuity, then turned to the capsule. One by one, the items were lifted out and checked against the manifest. The photographs, slightly yellowed, but intact. The Kettle Creek Courier's inaugural edition in a plastic sleeve. The sounding donor's ledger. The hand-drawn map, which drew appreciative murmurs from the older residents. Dot heard someone behind her say, "That's the old Perkins boundary before the rezoning." The church hymnal drew a round of applause from the congregation. A bicentennial coin and a small folded flag drew quiet smiles from the older crowd. The Little League baseball drew a louder one, and a man 3 rows back shouted, "That's my dad's signature." The crowd left. Then Helen reached the final item on the manifest. And lastly, she announced, a sealed personal letter from Edwin Marsh to be opened on this occasion. She reached into the capsule. Her hand moved through the interior, searching. She checked the manifest again, looked back into the empty cylinder, and lifted it slightly to peer underneath. It appears this item is not present. She frowned, then relaxed. After 50 years, it's possible the letter was misplaced during the original sealing or deteriorated. We'll make a note in our records. That's odd, the woman beside Dot murmured. Everything else survived just fine. Her neighbor shrugged. 50 years, things happen. Helen moved on to the closing remarks. Most of the crowd had already lost interest. The smell of funnel cakes drifted across the common, sweet and heavy, competing with the kettle corn. But Dot watched Craig Marsh. His face revealed nothing. He was good, wearing the same pleasant expression he had worn all morning, nodding along with Helen's closing words as though nothing of consequence had occurred. But as the crowd began to shift and break apart, Dot saw it. Craig's right hand moved to his jacket pocket, patted it, a small gesture. He had the letter, and he believed he had gotten away with it. Across the crowd, Dot caught Margaret's eye. Margaret gave the smallest nod. She had seen it too. June, from her position near the back, raised one hand to her collarbone. Their signal. Beverly stood very still beside the refreshment table, her hands folded. 4 women, 4 different angles, one shared certainty. Craig smiled for a photograph with the mayor, shook a few more hands, and walked away from the empty capsule with his grandfather's letter in his pocket. Dot accepted a cup of cider from a volunteer. It was warm and sharp with cinnamon, and she held it in both hands against the October chill. Around her, the celebration continued. The band started up again. Somewhere, a child shrieked with laughter near the dunk tank. She allowed herself a small, private smile. The sunroom looked different in the rain. Gray light through the windows instead of gold. The oak, dripping. The lake, invisible. Dot set out 4 teacups and waited. The anniversary was over. The capsule had been resealed and returned to storage, -1 letter. The bunting was down. The dunk tank was disassembled. Craig Marsh had posted a photograph of himself at the celebration on the town council's website with the caption, "Proud to honor our community's legacy." Rain tapped the sunroom windows. The oak in the backyard was half bare now, its remaining leaves dark gold against a gray sky. Tea was poured. Beverly had brought cinnamon scones, warm from the oven, and the room smelled of butter and brown sugar. Murder Most Trivial, the mystery novel they were supposed to discuss this week, sat in the center of the coffee table. A paperback with a cracked spine and a bookmark 3/4 of the way through. Dot picked it up, looked at it for a moment, and set it aside. June raised an eyebrow. "I don't think we're discussing the book." Dot sighed. "I don't think so." "Good." Margaret set her pen down. The killer was obvious by chapter 4. The killer is always obvious when you read the way you do. June munched on the scone. "Some of us read for pleasure, Margaret. I read for accuracy. Pleasure is incidental." Beverly smiled, but said nothing. She wrapped her hands around her teacup and waited. She knew what was coming. They all did. Dot took a sip of chamomile tea. That letter is still out there, and whatever Edwin Marsh confessed 50 years ago, his grandson thought it was worth committing a crime to hide. I keep thinking about what Len Driscoll said, Beverly offered. That Edwin was troubled. He was unstable. And Craig Marsh is following in his footsteps. Or trying not to, Margaret said. Following in his footsteps would be a mistake, but getting that letter out of circulation and hiding it. Beverly's voice was soft. That's still a crime. That he needed to put something right. Whatever is in that letter, it mattered to him. It was the last honest thing he tried to do. It appears Craig took his grandfather's honesty and shoved it in his jacket pocket. The question is what we do about it. Margaret picked up her pen again. We have a theory. We have circumstantial evidence. We have 4 sets of eyes that watched him touch his pocket like a man checking for his wallet. But we don't have the letter, and without the letter, we don't have proof of anything. So what do? Beverly asked. Dot looked at the 3 women who had become something more than a book club, something closer to family, over the 12 years of Thursday evenings in this room. I think we have a better mystery to solve. June leaned back in her chair. This should be more interesting than the book. Margaret's eyes gleamed. Now we're talking. Outside the windows, the rain kept falling, soft and steady. The lake was invisible behind the fog. And in the sunroom, the Thursday book club had a new case. Author's note: thank you for listening to The Missing Letter. The Thursday Book Club returns in Lakeside Murder, Book 1 in the Thursday Book Club Mysteries, coming in September 2026. For release news and more exclusive cozy mysteries, please visit Katherine Fletcher's website using the link in the video description.